Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9.9 support tier list. So thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. It just takes a couple of clicks. It's free, it's easy. And be sure to check out my patch notes video that I just released yesterday, and I'm going to release an 80 carry tier list tomorrow. So be sure to check that out as well as the rest of the content on the channel. Lots of great stuff for you over the last couple of days. Okay, so let's talk really quickly just about the meta overview. I think the biggest thing that's going to impact support is I think that there was a massive buff to Soraka. And I've watched the patch notes of several other content creators, Freak, LS, and Skara. And a lot of people seem to be really underestimating just how much this movement speed buff is actually going to help Soraka. So Soraka's first up. We'll talk about it in a little more depth here in just a second. But I think there's one line on here that I don't think had always been there. Now, maybe it had, and I just hadn't noticed. But it's certainly relevant now that you can run in any direction with this. So your bonus movement speed, if you hit somebody with a Q, is up to 30% now. It used to be 10% flat at all ranks. It's up to 30. Now it decays, but that's still super fast. And whenever you heal an ally with your W, they also get the movement speed, granting them the same effects for the duration. So they get the heal, but they also get this movement speed. So you can actually use this on initiation champs like Jarvan or Hecarim or really just anybody that would want 30% movement speed. And you can pass this out like candy in the mid game to everybody, right? I mean, you probably won't get to the full 30%. I imagine you'll probably go 3 points of Q in lane and then max out your W, but that goes to a 2-second cooldown. So you can just keep passing this off to people and just keep speeding up everybody by 30% or 22%, you know, by around level 9 or 10 over and over and over again. I mean, that seems really strong to me. In addition to, she got higher AP ratios on this, so that AP is going to scale better with her. And the flat healing is a lot. It's 140 base heal on this. So that's almost like, I don't know, 75%. It's approaching 75% of your normal heal. So that's pretty tremendous. I think those will be some really good buffs for her. I also think that the slowing down of the scuttle, which we'll talk about here in a second, is also going to help her out. So I think that she's going to be the biggest beneficiary, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on this. I didn't notice it when I was first talking about it in the patch notes until I kind of went through a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute. She applies that to other people that she heals once she gets her Q. That's what it looks like. I haven't tested it yet. But it says it applies the same effects with an S. Not just the healing, but all of the effects. And this is like rejuvenation, which gives you these effects. So I think it speeds everybody up. So anyways, I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people have overlooked, just how ridiculous that is. It's not just that she gets a ton of movement speed, which is awesome in and of itself. That helps sort of neutralize one of her greatest weaknesses, is that she doesn't have a lot of escapes. Well, now she's really fast. Almost all the time. So I think that's something to definitely keep an eye on. We'll talk about that first up on the tier list. Tom Kench has pretty much been destroyed. I knocked him off. He's not even tier 3 anymore in my book. It's just an extreme nerf. I talked about this a lot on the patch notes. I'm not going to rehash all of that. But the biggest stuff that you need to know is that he can no longer really move when he eats an ally. The cooldown is increased on his W, and the cooldown is increased on his ult. So all that he has is higher base stats, which is like, who cares? He's still not going to be that great in the laning phase. He did get some minor buffs to his Q, which is good. Like, it can slow more, but it's not more damage on the Q. So I think he's pretty much gone. I mean, some people are saying maybe you could play him top lane. I guess maybe that helps him top lane, but he's very, very vulnerable to ganks in the top lane, so I don't know. We'll see, but he's definitely dead as support, I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe people will find a new build. I guess if you pick him and, like, you really, like, you have a jungler duo with you or something, and you just, like, leverage his ult hugely just to completely snowball on bottom lane, you know, maybe you could use him as, like, a support for a booster strat or something, but it's going to be really hard to win with him. Okay, Rakan is a little more interesting. I had expected more out of Rakan. You know, they had been teasing a bit more on the PvE with him. They had been talking about taking his W up to 1850. Then they reduced it back down to 1700. So it's similar to Tom Kencher. They're giving him a lot of base stats, but they're taking away, like, cool signature parts of his kit, which I don't like that. Like, no one cares about base stats. I mean, they're power, but they're hidden power, right? And that's what they've tried to move away from in recent years. It's just like making people strong just because they have a lot of stats, right? They want you to be strong because you're able to make, like, plays on the map that are visual, that look good, that feel good. But they are giving him back 60 health, which is quite a bit. So that means that he can fight a lot more in the laning phase. He does get 3 more armor. He does get some more magic resist, which is nice over time. But that's going to take a while for that to kick in. He has less attack damage, which, I mean, that'll matter for all ends, I guess, but most of the time it's not going to matter that much. You don't get a ton of auto attacks off because he has really short range. You do get the extra movement speed on Grand Entrance, but the quickness, you can no longer cast Grand Entrance, so you can no longer cast your W or your Flash during the first 5 seconds of quickness. Now, keep in mind, the quickness still works when this happens, okay? So you can still tag people. So you can still Flash R on them. And realistically, how much of a difference is that, in solo queue? If someone's within Flash range, whether you R Flash immediately on them or you Flash R. I mean, it's a difference of like 0.1 seconds. No one's going to react to that most of the time in solo queue. So I think that the Flash R is not going to make that much of a difference. Now, the fact that you can't Flash RW could be something, but you can still knock people up with your W and then trigger your R. Now, they're probably going to be able to move out of that to an extent, but it's obviously going to give them a bit more time to play around, but you're really fast when that happens. And if you take Nimbus Cloak, which is pretty standard on Rakan, then you're going to get a lot of movement speed out of that as well. So I think you'll still be able to get on most targets. It's just going to give them a bit more notice. You can still use your E as well to get on a target. So if, your Sejuani runs in or whatever, and you E onto the Sejuani, and then you ult, or you W, and then you ult. Like, there are still lots of combos you can do with him. So we'll see. I'll try him out. This will make him a little bit better in the laning phase. This is going to be way better, or at least probably noticeably better on the W when you're not using your ult. So that's good. It's not going to be anywhere near the 2100 that it was, but it's certainly better than the 500 or the troll 1450 that they had, and then they gave it 50 more. It's like, come on. It's like, I don't know, 3% move speed. But anyway, so we'll see. I don't think he'll crack 50%. I don't remember how far down in the dumpster he is as far as win rate goes. I think he was like 48%, something like that. Yeah, 48.5%. Now, I had someone ask in one of my last videos, they're like, why do you always, search by win rate on champion? Why don't you just type in champion name and find it? It's like, I can find that, but I want to see who it's near. Like, I need the context. Like, oh, okay, Rakan's just above Volibear support. Or he's even with Volibear support, and Annie support and Poppy support. So that's not good company to be in if you're looking for support. So anyways, that's why I searched down, just so I can get a sense of the context. Okay. Morgana got nerfed. She'll still be used for the same purposes. It's just going to be easier to break her Black Shield. So I moved her down a little bit. It probably won't make a huge difference for a lot of Morgana players, though. Blitz is relatively neutral. Basically, you can control his ult now to where it's not going to accidentally take CS or trigger Baron or Dragon or whatever if you're trying to ward. So that's nice, but it's really not going to be that much more damage. It's very important to note that with that change, his R has a delay on it. So that's a big thing. It's like I heard some people saying, oh, well, you could do like attack speed blitzcrank or something with it. No, you can't, because it has a delay. It says after a 1 second delay, and it just overlaps. It does not, it just refreshes that delay, because they deliberately do not want you to stack like Ginsu's Rageblade or something with this. Okay, so they're trying to keep you away from those kind of troll builds. It's basically going to do the same amount of damage. You just get to control it a little bit more. Now, you can apply it to multiple targets during that 1 second delay window, but if you apply it to the same target, it's just going to refresh. It's not going to do anything extra. So if you get like max attack speed and you hit them 3 times in 1 second or whatever, it's still only going to do this amount of damage. Okay. Aftershock nerf, Scorch buff, favors enchanters. Aftershock is definitely a nerf for tanks. I think that, some people were saying it's obviously a buff or a nerf for things like Lissandra and Ryze that were getting Aftershock. But it still is a nerf for tanks. And the reason is, now in order to get the extra magic resistant armor, you have to specifically build magic resistant armor. Before, you were able to just, based on level, you would get free magic resist and armor. But there aren't many items that give you magic resist and armor that supports are going to buy, right? You're not going to be getting a lot of gargoyle, stone plating. maybe sometimes, but typically a lot of the support build path heavily favors armor items, right? So you're thinking about things like Knight's Vow, Ninja Tabby, Zeke's does have some magic resist on it, but it's primarily armor. You do have your lockets in there, but basically if they have a well-balanced team, it's going to be a nerf because you can't buy armor and magic resist items at the same time usually. I know there are some items, like you got your Caesar Art Portal, your Gargoyle, Stone Plate, and stuff like that, but it's very niche, out there items. So that means that most of the time it's going to be a nerf. It's going to be, especially because a lot of your items are going to be health items too. You're thinking your Eye of the Equinox is going to have a large health component to it. You're paying for a good chunk of health on Knight's Vow. So, a lot of your items are going to be health items, and those won't benefit from this. So, I think it's not like you can't run Aftershock anymore on anybody, but it's definitely not as good as it was, for sure. Especially, like, around kind of the mid-game, when you're just completing your Eye of the Equinox, but you haven't had time to buy a lot of armor or magic resist yet, or whatever, around level 8, level 9, that's when you're probably going to be weakest with it. The damage is also down a little bit, although not a lot. It is based on your maximum health now, a little bit more of your maximum health. It's 0.00. No, that's right. So it's a little bit more of your maximum health, but it's not going to make a huge difference. But yeah, that's just one thing that I noticed that a lot of people overlooked is you got both of these at the same time based on level before, and now you're only getting whichever one you choose to itemize into. So that's definitely weaker. And Scorch is a big deal on Enchanters. Scorch is really, really good on things like Sona, like Nami. It's basically 50% extra damage on Scorch in the early game, which adds up. I mean, a lot of people were saying, oh, Scorch doesn't matter that much. It only procs every 10 seconds. I mean, that's true. Just think about it. 5 extra damage early on. If you're proccing this, 6 times a minute, maybe 5, just because maybe you're not going to proc it exactly on time. That's still 25 extra damage per minute. And that adds up, when you're thinking about that, plus Frostfang, plus Airy, plus just normal ability damage and auto attacks, like, that adds up. If you're in lane for, 3 minutes early on and they're proccing 25 extra damage on you per minute, that's 75 health. I mean, there's a lot of times where I see people walk away with less than 75 health. So I think that could be a really big deal for early game champs. And then finally, one of the more interesting ones that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and maybe I'm just reading into this too much, but Ghost Poro, you get an additional 2 stacks whenever it spots an enemy. Now, I don't know if this can spot multiple enemies. So, like, what I'm thinking is, if we look at the map here, right? I don't remember. I don't think I can zoom in with this one. Do I have the other one? Or if I can zoom in with this one or not. Okay, here we go. So what I'm thinking, if it's going to let me, I don't remember how to grab this. Anyways, this front bush, in your lane, wherever you are, just put a ward at the very front of the bush. When it expires, it turns into Ghost Poro. And then they're going to have to walk up to go to the lane. And so it's going to spot probably both of them. And I'm wondering, will it give you 2 stacks for that? So, when it turns into a Ghost Poro, it gives you 1 stack. And your early wards that you start with expire in 1 minute. And I think they refresh in like 2.5 or 3 minutes. But you put it there. It expires after 1 minute. That's 1 stack. And it sees the other 2 people that come to lane. That's 2 more stacks. That's 3 stacks. And if you can do that once every 3 minutes, then you're going to have, 9 stacks by close to 10 minutes. And you can get 1 more stack in there somewhere. So that's what I'm wondering. Or does it only trigger once if it sees anybody? So the wording's kind of ambiguous. But I think I think that's definitely interesting. That you could potentially stack this up by 10 minutes. Because it's like 600 something gold value. If we look at, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but I added up last night. I think it's 650 gold value. So if you can get something at 650 gold value sometime between 10 and 15 minutes, that's extremely strong. I mean, boots are like about a 350 gold value, and everybody's getting boots, and you get those around like 9.5 to 10 minutes. So if you could get something that's approaching double value that actually does something early on, too. It gives you vision, and you're getting some free AP and AD before 10 minutes. Boots literally don't give you anything until you get them. At 10 minutes, maybe it's worthwhile. So I don't know where you would squeeze that in. I think the build would be, if you're going to go for something like that, you would get Ghost Poro plus Taste of Blood. Taste of Blood gives you really good healing. That's going to give you about as much as Biscuits would, possibly even more, depending on the situation. And then Ghost Poro will give you a lot of extra stats. So I could see something like 80 carries going, Ghost Poro, or maybe even just switching off it. I think that with the Ultimate Hunter, I know a lot of people are thumbing their nose at Ultimate Hunter, but there's some 80 carries that would not mind getting Ultimate Hunter as second, I think. Like, Vayne has an extremely powerful ult. Then, of course, you've got your standard, like Ashe, Varus, that type of stuff that has really strong initiation on their ult. So, I mean, I think that going something like Taste of Blood, Ulti Hunter wouldn't be completely out of the question for some 80 carries. But I think that almost all of them would like to have an extra, whatever it is, 15 AD. It might even be more than that. 20-something AD. I don't remember what the number is. 650 gold worth of AD by 10 minutes. It's like 2 kills worth of gold. So, I don't know. We'll see. And like I said, and you have something else good in that tree, too, at Taste of Blood. You even have Cheap Shot, which is not amazing on supports. If you go for this on a support, you could go with Cheap Shot on something like Janna or Lulu, because they have a slow, and then they just have to auto-attack after that. It's really easy to do that with their setup. And then you could go Ghost Poro on top of that and, get a bunch of AP pretty quickly. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. And then Rift Scuttle is the final thing here that I'll mention. It favors enchanters pretty heavily because, like, what happens right now is a lot of times people will go in the level 2 gank bottom, and you're really vulnerable to that kind of all-in from someone like, because you're really squishy, obviously, early on. So someone like a Jarvan or Hecarim or something like that can level 2 you in lane. It's going to get your flashes at least a lot of times. And then they're going to get Scuttle, and they're going to have a huge advantage. You're going to have to play scared the whole time. But now that Rift isn't showing up, that Scuttle isn't showing up for the, another minute or so, that means that people are likely going to path to the other side of the map, or they're just not going to have something to farm. So they're going to be away from you in bot lane, which is awesome. Because now, I mean, what are they going to do? I guess they could do, like, Red, Raptors, Krugs, and then go Scuttle. But it would be extremely delayed if they do that. So, because, like, right now, there's no penalty for trying that. If you go bottom, you try a gank, you fail, doesn't even matter. You can just go get the Scuttle after that. And it forces you to go, like, very early game champs that can get priority in the lane. Now, enchanters can do that. Sona and Nami are great at getting priority in the lane. But if your 80 carry picks something like Ezreal or Kai'Sa or Vayne and the enemy has Draven or whatever, like, you're going to lose that Scuttle. And if your jungler is foolish enough to try to fight for it, which a lot of times they are, people just will not give that up, then they can get collapsed on and killed. So I think it's just going to make it a little bit less team comp reliant, a little bit less early macro reliant, to manage your lane. So I really like that a lot. And that's going to help out a lot of kind of the tank junglers that really want 3 skills before they go in. So someone like Sejuani, I've heard Elise bandied around a lot. She's obviously not a tank, but she does want 3 skills. So I think that your usual suspects, your Jarvan, your Hecarim, those are still going to be pretty good. But I do think this opens it up for more options for other junglers as well. So I think it's a very good move. And that's going to give you more alone time in the lane to establish control as an enchanter. So that's good. Okay, so let's go over the tier list here really quickly. All right, so I'm going to bump Soraka up to number 1. That might be ambitious. If that interaction does not work the way that I think it does, if you do not speed up your allies with your W, then she'll probably fall back a little bit. Maybe number 4, number 5. But I already mentioned a lot of the stuff of why I changed it, but let's go in here and talk about it a bit more. And I'm going to try to zip through these and see if I can at least get through the top 10 and a couple of honorable mentions. So Soraka in general, everyone pretty much knows how she works. Like, late game, she just heals for a ton. It's very difficult to win a fight if you don't take her down. So if she's running around able to heal, you're probably going to lose the fight. You have to target her. You have to kill her. So she's a major threat later on in the game. A thing that sort of why I've favored Sona most of the time over Soraka in a lot of situations, and why statistically Sona has a higher win rate than Soraka, although Soraka has been climbing up a lot lately, as you can see, is that Sona heals herself when she's healing other people with her W, so she's less vulnerable in that sense than Soraka is. And Sona's harassment in lane is not skill shot based. So you just Q and auto attack a lot just over and over again, and eventually they take a bunch of damage and lose, unless they all in and engage you. And then Sona also scales extremely hard later on into the game. With all of the auras, you know, she can put Ardent Censer on everybody. She can use Athene's Unholy Grail on everybody. She's just a real abuser of a lot of the best runes like Airy, and a lot of the best items like Ardent Censer and Athene's right now for support. So she has extreme scaling. It's very difficult to compete with. So that's why Soraka has been down a little bit on my tier list, further away from Sona, because you really have to hit your Qs, and those are harder to hit than they would seem. You know, the strategy had been with a lot of Soraka players just max E. I was never a fan of that, except in like really high elos where you can leverage that harass a ton, where your 80 carry is actually going to chip in. Because if you're just doing a little bit of light harass, like this is pretty bad for team fights. This is just for poking in lanes with Equinox. And if your 80 carry is not really helping you harass, then you're not going to make meaningful headway in the bot lane, right? They're just going to heal through a lot of it or sustain through it or whatever. A lot of the time, not always, but in Challenger, you know, you could max Equinox because, you know, any damage that you put on him is a huge deal because, you know, your 80 carry is going to follow up. You're going to be able to call down the jungler to get a dive on him. You know, you're just going to be able to leverage that light harass a lot more. But now, so that build is dead. 100% it's gone. Like, they've increased the cooldown a lot on it, and they lowered the damage by a ton. So now they took 60 damage off of it, so it's way, way, way lower than it was. The Q definitively does more damage now than that does. But I think that going at least 3 points of Q in lane and then probably maxing Astral Infusion after that is going to be the way to go. And this is a build that I've recommended for quite a while for people that can land these Qs that are kind of in the lower brackets, where you need to kind of do it yourself in lane a lot more. So the big changes here are she got a lot more healing, both self-healing and healing to allies. That's 140 extra healing off of this. So this doesn't scale quite as well as the W in terms of healing, but it's still pretty damn nice. And it does damage, which is great. And keep in mind that when you damage somebody, you know, with Star Call, that damage will translate over into Athene's Unholy Grail, and then that can give you more healing in turn over time. And it doesn't damage yourself when you use this. So that's the biggest thing. When Soraka heals somebody, then it damages herself. So when you're healing people, you really need to be having this buff on you, this Star Call. And it's a big heal now. Look at this. So you have 200, but then it gets an extra 140 now. So that's 340 base healing with a 1.1 AP ratio on it. So if you have like 200 AP, if you're going like an Athene's plus Ardent Censer build, then that's going to be, you know, like 500 healing or something every time you W. And a thing that's really underrated as well is it speeds up the rate. It says this in the patch notes, but the healing comes out faster. So it's not evenly distributed among the W time. It ticks more than others. So I don't know how fast this ticks, but this is important because if you heal someone multiple times, then you're going to just refresh this hot. You're going to refresh the heal over time. And now you're going to get a lot more value out of that heal if you're healing the same target over and over again, just refreshing this. So that's a really nice buff to her healing in practice when you're actually, you know, on the field trying to heal up. That's really handy. But then the big thing that I just talked about a little bit ago was her getting a ton of extra movement speed. It used to be 10% flat when you're running away from enemies, okay? Now it's 14% at level 1, which is already 40% more than it was, and it's any direction. So you can run towards enemies, you can run sideways, you can run directly away from them, you can do whatever you want with this speed. Now you might say, why would you want to be running towards enemies? Well, that's where this second part comes in. Whenever you heal an ally after you Q an enemy, then you give them the movement speed. So now you're giving your ally, you know, like I said, up to 30% movement speed for 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That's now it does decay. What's up, dear?
Storms are brewing.
Okay.
I think it's getting closer.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thank you for the alert.
my power.
Okay. My wife is alerting me there's a storm brewing. I just heard thunder as she said that. It's an ominous sign.
A brewing.
Somewhat a brewing?
Storm a brewing.
A brewing, that's right. So this might cut off. I doubt it. We'll see. If the internet goes out, I can actually keep recording this, though, because it's recorded on the hard drive first, then I upload it. So But we'll see. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If it does, I guess I'll have to re-record. But anyways, so this is a huge deal. Like, this is basically a Lulu whimsy, because Lulu gives 30% movement speed to allies. And I'll tell you, that is a massive deal on Lulu, too. When you can speed up something like a Hecarim, or you can speed up, Jarvan or Jax, or just anybody that's trying to get in there, and there's a lot of those types of champions right now that's trying to get onto that back line, it's a big deal. But the main difference there is Lulu's W starts off on a 12-second cooldown before CDR. This, once you max your W, is on a 2-second cooldown. That's right, 2 seconds. So that means you can put this on your entire squad over and over and over again to get a ton of extra movement speed. Now, the movement speed does decay. I don't know how fast it decays, but presumably you'll be able to get at least half of this, by the 3rd second or so. So it's a really, really big buff to her survivability, and it's a buff to her utility. It's a big thing about Soraka, too, compared to a lot of other enchanters, is she doesn't offer a ton of utility to her team. Like, what she does is she heals. She's got a silence that you can cast once per fight, and she's got a lot of healing. So, historically, that makes her really vulnerable to things like grievous wounds, more so than other champs, because other champs do stuff even though their healing is cut, right? Nami can still land bubbles. Sona still has her AoE stun on her ult. She's still got her debuff if you hit them with the green power cord. She's still got the movement speed off of her E. Other enchanters just can do things. They can still displace people. They have CC. They have all these tools. Soraka historically doesn't have that much. She's got like a little slow, on her Q. She's got a silence on a really long cooldown. But now she has this like basically ghost you can put on all of your allies with like a 2-second cooldown. So that gives her a lot of much needed utility. So even if they are cutting the healing in half, you're still speeding up your whole team. I think that's a huge, huge win, and I have not heard people talking about that at all. LS overlooked it. Freak overlooked it, as far as I remember. Maybe Freak mentioned it. I think I fell asleep during his patch notes. No offense to Freak. It's awesome. I was just super tired, and I was trying to listen to it and get it in there. But anyways, I don't think a lot of people are hyping this up as much as it should be hyped. I mean, we'll see. Once again, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it looks like granting them the same effects. It does not say grants them a heal. It says grants them the effects, and these are the effects. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that's enough to catapult her up to the top. I mean, she's already a really good lane bully. She has pretty good wave clear, too, if you get 3 points of Q in lane. People forget that. You can push in pretty quickly with this. It's super mana efficient early on. I mean, you're doing 200 damage for 60 mana if you land this. So that right there is already over 3 times the value. You're getting 3 times the damage for the mana that you're paying. And you're getting potentially an extra 140 heal and all this extra movement speed. So this is a super, super good value proposition now if you're landing these Qs in the laning phase. And then, of course, you still have your heal and all that kind of stuff. And you have your ult, which is global presence, very strong. Really good. So, yeah, I think she's going to be a beast. And she's very good versus other enchanters. She's really good into Nami because she outscales Nami. She's really good in a Lulu. She outscales Lulu in terms of healing. She can keep up with Sona. She outscales Janna. So she's really, really good right now. So, I can't overstate just how big of a deal this is. And I know this is going to make Ed very happy on the channel and other Soraka enthusiasts very happy on the channel. But yeah, this movement speed, the fact that you can do it in any direction, apply it to allies, and the fact that she gets a massive amount of extra healing makes a huge difference. So they did nerf the Equinox. They did nerf the damage on her Star Call. They took 30 damage off, so that does matter. But at the end of the day, I think that the healing and the scaling on this, it just went like through the stratosphere. She does have a longer cooldown on her Qs. That's worth noting as well. It used to be 5 at every level, but by level 5, it's going to be 6-second cooldown. But in exchange for just how powerful this is, I think that's probably fair. So anyways, yeah, I think Soraka is going to be number 1 right now, and I'm going to bump that lane pressure up a little bit here. Probably still low kill threat. I'm going to bump that safety up more, though. Then the scaling is going to be there. So runes, I would recommend Airy, Mana Flow, Transcendence. Actually, with how much you're healing yourself now, I might go Absolute Focus. Because you're getting a ton of extra healing on yourself these days. So I think you can keep yourself over the certain amount, especially because in the laning phase, you're not using your W a lot. You're using your Q. And then it's only using a W if someone's taking a lot of damage. So I think that's fine. And then depending on the matchup, you can go Gathering Storm. Scorch is also really good. I'll probably go Scorch because you're already so good in the late game. I'll go with Scorch. And then Revitalize, obviously something that you want. She does a ton of healing. You really have to have Revitalize. That's another really good thing about her. She's not going to be missing that magical footwear as much as a lot of the other enchanters because Revitalize is still very strong on her. And then Bone Plating. Just got a buff, so that'll help keep her safe a little bit. And remember that you want to go either Barrier or Heal on her. Talk to your AD carry to see which one, but those are going to be the best. Barrier specifically is what she will usually use because, once again, if they don't kill you, you're going to win the fight most of the time. So you want to stay alive as long as you possibly can in these team fights. So yeah, I mean, Exhaust is not usually going to do that much because you're going to be lower on health a lot of times when people are diving you. So you're not getting as much value out of Exhaust as a champion who's going to be at full health and getting dove a lot of times. Exhaust also doesn't do a lot versus true damage. So just take Barrier. Trust me, most Soraka enthusiasts are taking Barrier. I think, yeah, pretty much everybody takes Barrier. There's a couple of odds and ends there. You see a heal every now and then or a cleanse, but by and large, it's going to be Barrier. Now, Barrier is kind of selfish. It doesn't help your AD carry, but the best way to help your AD carry is to stay alive so that you can keep healing. Okay, and then boots. Mobility boots are the greedy build. You do get a ton of extra movement speed now, so you may not need that anymore. I would say like maybe Ninja Tabby or Mercury Tread is probably going to be better. Another greedy build is like Ionian boots. So I'll say Ionian boots. That's what a lot of people are going. But, you know, you can get Ninja Tabby or Mercury Treads or whatever. You just got to kind of read the situation. But she can pretty much get any kind of boot. It'll be fine on her. Frostfang, you definitely want to get that. It gives you a lot of extra damage on your harass. Now, I'm going to say instead of Mikhail's, especially now that she has a better AP ratio and just bigger heals in general, I think that going like Athene's Unholy Grail might make a bit more sense. It'll double down on your lane pressure. Mikhail's can be really good. Like, the extra healing is nice, but you don't need it as much now because you heal yourself for so much more off of your Qs. And, like, the Mikhail's active is really hard to use properly. I mean, if they have something like a Sejuani or an Ash Arrow or just, like, some really big piece of CC that you need to cleanse, Mikhail's is still really good on her, but I think that more and more people are switching over to Athene's. So I think that's fine. And then Redemption or Ardent after that, you can kind of figure it out. Hey, thanks, Seek. I appreciate it. Athene's also gives you a lot of mana regen early so that you can harass more in the laning phase. So that's what I'd probably go with. Okay, and I do have a Soraka guide if you want to look at it. You can find timestamps. I forgot to mention that earlier, but you can find timestamps in the description of this video and a link to this Google Doc that I'm going through. And then you can, check out these runes, my rating system, and any guides that I have available. Now, this one was from Season 8, but the playstyle is still similar, I think. So check that out. Okay, Sona, still going to be really good. Talk about Sona all the time. It's possible Sona should still be number 1. So the big thing about Sona, if you haven't watched my tier list before, I'm not going to spend forever talking about her because I really want to try to get this done in under an hour. And I talk about Sona all the time because she's been near the top of the tier list for like 5 or 6 patches. The main thing you need to know, this W, when this gets maxed out, gives you effectively somewhere around like a 2.5 AP ratio that ends up being on a 4-second cooldown. And even before the AP is calculated, gives over 1,000 plus healing and shielding. Combined in a 5-on-5 team fight. Now, obviously, that number is going to drop off a little bit if it's not a clean 5v5, but even if it's less than that, it's still ridiculous. So, it's very, very powerful. She has really good harassment in the laning phase. You do double damage off of this, don't forget, and it's has a really long range of 850, and it's not targeted. So, it's not a skill shot. It doesn't draw aggro from the minions unless you auto-attack. So, it's very, very strong. So, when you get this maxed out, you're going to have a 1.0 ratio on the base. It does 320 damage for 70 mana. And if you buff up your allies, you can get this all the way up to an additional 150 damage. So that can do up to 470 damage with a 2.5 ratio on it. I think this might have, this has a 2.0 on the W, and this has the 2.5. Either way, her ratios are just ridiculous. Like, she gets so much scaling off of AP, plus healing and shielding. All of her stuff, all of her mana things are like fairly affordable. Really low cooldowns on everything. She gets free like 35, 25% CDR on her abilities for some reason on her ult. I highly suspect they'll nerf this in the future because why is this here? She's already so strong. Why does she need this? Um, but anyways, and then she can basically have an exhaust that's on like a 5-second cooldown that she can put on people. Little mini exhaust. She can speed everybody up. She has a slow she can apply. So she's just got all kinds of different stuff she can do. So she harasses really well early. She scales really well with items. She's got some pretty good utility with the, on-call exhaust and the extra movement speed for you and your allies around the map. She has an AoE, like hard stun for 1.5 seconds. She scales extremely well with Ardent Sensor because everyone that gets touched by this Aria of Perseverance gets the Ardent Sensor buff, which is massive. Everyone that gets touched has the potential to get healed by the Athene stacks as well because she does so much damage with her Hymn of Valor. That means you're going to be just churning extra healing through the Athenes. I have a whole video about like 12 confusing items explained in League of Legends, and Athenes is one of them. The easiest way to think about it, I get asked about this all the time, is 35% of the damage that you would do before resistances gets translated into healing for your allies. Like, that's just the easiest thing to think about how that works. So, with this example, if you're just hitting 2 people by yourself, you're doing, and you have 0 AP, you're doing 320 damage. You would just take, 35% of that, about 100. So you would do the 320 damage. That would get reduced by magic resist. So if they had 100 magic resist, they would only take 160 damage. But you would still charge up for the healing based on the initial damage you would do before the mitigation. So you would still get about 100 extra healing charged into your Athenes. So, if that's still confusing, it's 35% spell vamp for your allies. Okay, not exactly that, but that's like the simplest way I can put it. It's better than that. It's slightly better than 35% spell vamp for allies is the best way to think of it. So, extremely strong, particularly on a champion that can put out as much damage as she does. Now, the one thing about this champ, sometimes people get confused about this, and I've talked about this a lot in the past, you need to be going utility items when you're an enchanter because you don't have the gold to afford the big-ticket items, right? The Lich Bane, the Seraph's Embrace, the Tear, all that stuff is way too expensive as a support, okay? And you're getting way more efficiency out of things like Athenes and Ardent Sensor than you are out of those items. Talked about this a lot in my Sona versus Taric video, or my Sona Taric bot lane video. So be sure to watch that if you haven't. That's popping up a lot. You're probably going to see that comp at MSI if it doesn't get banned out. The difference there is that Sona in that build is the 80 carry. So she ends up getting a lot of farm. And when you get a lot of farm, yes, you can get things like Seraphs. You can get things like Lich Bane. They are very good if you have the gold for it. If you don't have the gold for it, then Ardent Sensor and Athenes are going to be much, much better items for you. So please go some combination of Athenes and Ardent Sensor first. It's debatable which ones you want to go. Well, if I go to pro builds, it's probably all going to be the Taric Sona build. Pretty much. Yeah, almost everybody's the Taric Sona build. So it's difficult to... these are all like 80 carries playing this for the most part. But you really want to be going Athenes and Ardent Sensor in these situations. If you have a mage bot lane, if you for some reason have like a Cassiopeia or a Vlad or something like that, I would still go Athenes, but maybe you could try something else. I don't know. Just watch the Sona Taric video if you want to know more about it. But please, I highly, highly recommend that you go for the Athenes Ardent Redemption type of item line rather than the tier into Lich Bane type of thing. Okay. And the runes that you always want Aerie. I've heard some people saying, well, what about Guardian and things like that? Aerie's just too strong on her. You can proc it too often. It's great early harass. It's great scaling later with the AP and the plus healing and shielding that she gets. So you definitely want Aerie. Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, then Gathering Storm, and she scales so hard. I mean, you can do Scorch if you want to get more harassment early, but she scales so hard off of AP, I think you kind of have to get Gathering Storm. And then Bone Plating and Revitalize are really good. You can go for the, the boots on her if you want, but kind of like Soraka, I think she just gets too much value out of Revitalize. She just has too much healing, and Revitalize is very strong for that, especially now that they just buffed Bone Plating up a little bit. Okay, so Sona's still going to be really good. Statistically, she'll still probably be the queen, but I don't know. I'm putting Soraka up there. Maybe I'm hyping her up too much, but I think that change is going to be really big on her. Okay, Lulu's kind of the dark horse. Not a lot of other tier lists are going to have Lulu this high, and I know that my personal win rate on Lulu is not the most inspiring, and a lot of win rate on Lulu is not the most inspiring. She's got like a 50% win rate, so she's one of the lowest enchanters up there. You've got your Sona, your Nami, your Soraka. Nautilus has come up a lot, as I predicted last video. You've got your Janna, and then you've got Lulu, like, down here, right, at like 51%. So you might be saying, well, what's up with that? Why put Lulu so high? Her potential's extremely high, and she is tricky to learn, but she's not impossible. So I don't think you have to be a one-trick Lulu player to get good on her. But she's just very unforgiving if you screw up. She doesn't have a heal in lane. She's relatively vulnerable to ganks. Her ranges can be fairly short in some situations. Like if you're trying to run up and shield an ally, you only have 650 range on that shield versus like a Janna having an 800 shield range. So that does make her inherently dangerous. I mean, the biggest thing is the fact that that she's just squishy with very limited escapes. I mean, that's a huge thing, and that she doesn't have a heal. So if you take a bad trade in lane, it's rough. And she has a tough matchup into things like Sona and like Soraka, and Nami in particular, who are all very popular right now just because they have a heal and she doesn't. So they can bully her in lane. But why play her then? What's good about her? Well, she has extremely high buffs for a hyper AD carry. So for like a Jinx or a Twitch or a Vayne, she's very, very strong. So the value on your Pyke's Fairy Companion is somewhere, around level 9 or so. You're getting 63. That's not quite on hit value, but it's pretty close to on hit value. And on hit's valued at 25 each. So that's about 1,500 gold. It's not quite the same, but it's pretty close. Even if it's like 1,000 gold, it's a lot of extra on hit damage that you're doing. So anyone that's going to be getting on attack speed is really going to love that. You have pretty nice harass. If you can consistently hit this Glitter Lance, it's pretty strong in lane. It's got 925 range. It's pretty cheap overall. It has nice wave clear. So you can use this to help your lane push and go get priority if you want to go get vision or contest that first scuttle that comes up a little bit later now. Or if you see the enemy jungler top lane or something and your jungler's bot lane, you want to go for a dragon, you can get priority pretty quickly. And then Polymorph is very good against things that are trying to dive your backline. It has a lot of different uses. So, you can basically stun somebody for 2.25 seconds. You can give them a huge buff to both their attack speed and their move speed for an extended period of time. It is on kind of a long cooldown, so I recommend getting 3 points of Glitter Lance in lane and then maxing Whimsy after that. You could also do 3 points of Pyx in lane and then max Whimsy, but this definitely needs to be maxed out by level 10. This is your bread and butter, your huge ability. This is why you're picking Lulu most of the time. And then she also has an ult, which is pretty good at protecting allies, and it's on a fairly short cooldown, so very nice against assassins. Very good on divers, too. If you have your Hecarim jump onto their backline, you can use that wild growth to knock them up for about that extra second, that 3/4 of a second there. And sometimes that's the difference between them being able to flash over that wall or not and escaping. So don't be afraid to use this for CC as well. You can't overheal somebody with this. So even if they're at full health, you can still, your Hecarim jumps onto their backline. You can still use this immediately on him and not have to worry about the overhealing just to get that extra CC on everybody. And it also gives them a really nice slow for 7 seconds, and people forget about that. So that does allow things like Hecarim or Jax or whomever to slow people. So it doesn't have a huge radius on the slow, but it's nice. It's a nice touch. So I think that makes her very, very valuable. So obviously you can buff up your AD carry with this, which is tremendous, and give them a bunch of extra on-hit damage. But she's also really good with divers because you can use this on your diver and just allow your Hecarim to get in there faster, or your Jarvan or your Jax or whatever. So that can be a pretty good move as well. And then Wild Growth works both ways also. It can prevent assassins, and it can help your diver stick to people a little bit easier. Her shield is a little anemic compared to other ones. It's only got a 0.6 ratio. It's still on the 10-second cooldown. It only lasts for 2.5 seconds, then falls off. It can apply True Sights. This is good against invisible champions. So if you have a Twitch that's about to go invisible, an enemy Twitch, or if you have like a Vayne that's about to use her ult or is using her ult, Pyx will see them, and people forget about that. So if you put your E on them, just being able to see that Vayne can be a big deal. Now, a couple of kind of advanced tricks. I think I've got a Lulu guide on the channel that talk about this. But there's a couple of things that I've seen some people that I've watched replays for Lulu in the last few weeks, and on Viewers Night I played with some Lulus and things like that. A couple of things that I think maybe a lot of people don't know about that are useful for Lulu is you put your E on the enemy first, and then you hit them with the Q. So if you put your E on them, that's point click. You can't miss that. Auto attack. So you get a free auto attack on them. And then you can aim your Q off of that person. So you just have to look where Pyke's is. It'll be over like one of their shoulders. Like it'll be behind them, you know, left, right, wherever it is. And part of that's going to depend on how they're moving. And a good Lulu player or a good enemy will try to juke this by like moving back and forth and forcing Pyke's to like switch shoulders. But if you look at it where the fairy is, then just aim your mouse and shoot your Q across that person. Then that guarantees a glitter lance, or it's really highly likely you're going to hit it. And you can hit other enemies with it too. So if you basically hit the enemy support with your E and then try to aim your glitter lance properly, you can shoot the Q off of that person to go hit the enemy 80 carry if they're really low, or if you just want to harass the 80 carry with your Q. So that's kind of another reason to get 3 points of Q rather than help picks, because you can put the picks on the support and then harass the 80 carry off of the support. So that gives you more range, because this might be 650 range that you put on their support, and then you get an additional 925 off of that. You can also put it on minions. So you can put it on your own minion up front. It won't shield them anymore, but that does give you sort of a vehicle for using the glitter lance to harass off of that. So that's pretty handy if the 80 carry is really low, and you might be able to pick them off with a glitter lance off of that. So that's kind of a neat little trick you can do. And another thing, in team fights, if you put your E on the person who's diving, then you can aim your Q off of that person. So you put your E on that Hecarim that's running towards their backline. As he goes in, not only does it shield him, now Pyx is on him, and you can use that glitter lance to slow down the enemy so that they can't get away. Or like, you know, the Jax is trying to chase someone down, and you're behind them, and you can just put your Pyx on the Jax and then use your Q off of that and maybe hit the person for a slow. So that's a little bit more advanced tricks that people do with Lulu, is like, who do you put your shield on so that you can set up your Q? So that's handy. The big challenge with Lulu, in addition to being vulnerable to harass and being kind of squishy in general, is that you have to choose how do you want to use Whimsy. That's the biggest thing. Are you going to polymorph your... Are you going to polymorph the enemy? Are you going to speed up your engage, your Hecarim? Or are you going to save it and put it on your 80 carry so that they get all of the extra attack speed and the on-hit damage? It's not always easy to answer these decisions in team fights. So, you know, you just have to practice her, think about it carefully, and I think that's why she has a lower win rate, because it's not always obvious what you're supposed to do with her. You know, it's pretty obvious most of the time what you're supposed to do with the other enchanters, right? They have sort of one thing that they do that they're good at, but the fact that she's sort of a Swiss Army knife of a bunch of different things you can do, whether it's helping initiation, buffing your 80 carry, or protecting against assassins, you have to choose which mode is appropriate for different situations, and that can be tough. Also, you know, she doesn't have a lot of skill shots, but it's very easy to mess up her skills, particularly Whimsy, because just because you know what you want to do doesn't mean it's going to go down that way. So if you're trying to polymorph the enemy assassin and they are like right on top of your 80 carry, so Kha'Zix jumps right in the frame of your 80 carry, this can hit both of them. So you might try to polymorph the Kha'Zix and accidentally speed up your 80 carry, and then the assassin just kills him in the next hit. So it's really, really hard to get that click, especially if they are overlapping in frame. So if they're literally right on top of each other, it's tough to say. I don't know how the system prioritizes which one's going to happen, but this happens with Tahm Kench some too, when you're trying to eat an enemy or you're trying to eat an ally and you accidentally eat a minion because your ally's fighting in the middle of a minion wave. Sometimes it just, like, if there's overlapping frames, it's just kind of, maybe it's random, I don't know who gets targeted, but that can definitely be a feels bad. So yeah, keep that in mind, that it's trickier, and the same thing goes with shielding versus damaging. Sometimes you're trying to shield an ally and you actually damage an enemy. So it is really easy to misclick, so you have to have some nice mouse work to make that work, and a little bit of luck sometimes if there's overlapping frames. So I think those are the things that hold her down the most. Not that I think that she has the potential to be super strong. It's just, it's very difficult to figure out what to do with her. A lot of people don't know a lot of her little tricks, like using the glitter lance off of your own allies so that you get more range. And yeah, just the potential for those misclicks. So I think she is very, very strong though. And to be fair, I haven't been winning on a lot of other stuff the last like week and a half either. And I think a big part of that is just lack of focus and just not shot calling enough and things like that. I don't think it's Lulu as much as it is something else, but in general, she doesn't have as high of a win rate as other champs, but other enchanters, but I think the potential's there. Okay, so lane pressure, kill threat, safety. You just want to go Airy, Mana Flow Ban, Absolute Focus, and Scorch. You can switch over to Transcendence if you're going to get harassed a lot in the laning phase. And then probably still just footwear and biscuits. You could try the cheap shot build that I was talking about before. If you hit them with a Q and you auto attack them, it does a lot of extra damage with cheap shot, so that's handy. Or you could go for Ghost Poro plus Taste of Blood. That would give you some extra sustain in the laning phase. So I'll try some of these out and see what I think. It depends on just how rough footwear is and just how good Ghost Poro is. But she could be a big beneficiary of that. And then just usually mobility boots, Frostfang. I have been taking coin a lot lately. If you're not sure if your AD carry is going to actually harass and you just kind of want to scale for later, coin can be pretty good. The extra movement speed is nice because she's on the slow side at 325 movement speed. And typically you're not going to get Athenes as fast as you will on other champs, so you're not losing as much by missing out on the Frostfang. But it just depends on how the lane's going. So I've been favoring coin lately, but I'll put Nomad down. But I think in the best case scenario, you're probably going to take Frostfang. But that's if your AD carry has a pulse and you have a good matchup in the bot lane. So there's a lot of ifs lately. But and then just Ardent Censer and Redemption is what I usually go. You do have the option of going Zeke's if they have an AD assassin that's really troublesome because her ult is on such a short cooldown that you can use it proactively in a fight, so you don't have to hold it. So that can be helpful if you want to try out Zeke's. So I think that's niche. I wouldn't go Zeke's every time, but it is something in some situations. If they have a Fed Zed or Talon or something that could be useful, you could go something like Ninja Tabby plus Zeke's and get a bit more protection than some other enchanters out there. Okay, almost out of time. Nami, pretty much the same deal as it has been on last patches. I think that the Scorch buff definitely helps her out early. She wants to put as much pressure as she can early in the game. She might switch back to Bone Plating plus Revitalize. That is pretty good scaling. Or she might try the Taste of Blood plus Ghost Poro. So we'll see. I'll try it out. I'll see how it works with the Ghost Poro. Like I said, if you can get the full 30 AP off in 10 to 15 minutes, then Ghost Poro is going to be real strong. How much is... You don't get that off of Gathering Storm. Let me see. Until 30 minutes, I don't think. You don't get something equivalent to that. 30 AP. No. So yeah, even at 20 minutes on Gathering Storm, you're only getting 24 AP. So you have to wait till 30 before you get over that. And you're getting stuff like the whole time. Like you're getting some extra vision early on. You're starting to get some of that AP as it builds up over time. So I think it could be a better version of Gathering Storm. But we'll see. I mean, you can get Gathering Storm too if you want to, instead of Scorch, but... Anyways, Nami's good. She's a little bit more all-in on the early game. You do have more kill threat with bubbles, so can be good. She does have nice ranges on her abilities as well. She is going to get outscaled by Soraka and Sona and Lulu, though, so you really have to take advantage of her early on. But overall, she's still about as strong as she has been. I expect her to be a top contender. Janna... I think Janna's still going to be pretty good. Janna is another person who can use potentially something like Cheap Shot plus Ghost Poro if she wants to harass in the laning phase. She does have pretty good range on her W harass. Her shield is still a problem. It's been nerfed a lot. If you go 3 points of W in lane, that's going to put you really far behind on your shield. But she is very good against divers. So, if you're trying to protect your... Jinx from a Hecarim or a Jarvan or whatever, then Janna could be a really good option there. Problem is she can potentially get harassed out really hard by the Soraka, Sona, or Lulu early, or Nami. But she is very good at peeling and protecting key targets. All right. Nautilus, and I'm just kind of like flying through these now, so I guess I talk about the top 4 a lot, but I really do want to keep this close to an hour, so I'll just kind of go through the rest of them fairly quickly here. But yeah, you really should be trying to play one of these top 3 if you can. But I think that, Nami and Janna are still pretty respectable and pretty strong too. Nautilus is good. He did get a lot of buffs last patch. He kind of has a scaling problem. He can get outscaled by these enchanters as the game goes on. Aftershock did get nerfed here. He does have some unique options. He can go an Ardent Censer later on if you really want to. It's kind of an awkward build. You're going to be a lot squishier if you do that, but he does have good engage. He has good point-click CC. So he can definitely take advantage of champions like Twitch or Jinx who don't have a lot of mobility. I don't know about the footwear Cosmic build. It'll be okay. I mean, he's still going to be good. I still think he's the best hard engaged champ. I just feel like enchanters are getting stronger, with Scorch, and with like Scuttle. Like I said, Scuttle not being there, like being able to he does get priority pretty quickly in the lane with his E, so that he can push in and potentially make plays around the map. So if you do need a hard engaged champ, I think he is going to be one of the better options still. His win rate has gone up a lot. And particularly, like I said, against immobile AD carries like your Jinxes, like your Twitches that can't really move, he's going to be really strong. The fact that Tahm Kench just got knocked out of the meta completely, too, is really good for him. And the fact that Morgana has been weakened to an extent is going to be good as well. Like, people can still pick Morg, but it's going to be a lot easier to break her shield now. So I think it can be good. You just go Ninja Tabby, Equinox, and then after that, probably Zeke's or Knight's Vow. If your AD carry is really far ahead, you can take Font of Life and then Ardent Sensor, which can help out a ton later on just by, giving that Ardent Sensor buff to everybody. If you don't know how that works, if you slow somebody and you have Font of Life and they attack that person, that heal that they receive comes from you, and that can trigger Ardent Sensor. And he has pretty good AP ratios if you look at his stuff. And he has a shield he can put on himself, so he gets some benefit out of plus healing and shielding. So it's not quite as weird as it sounds. It does make sense. It's just that you are going to be pretty squishy if you get that. So that's a problem, but I still think that he's definitely respectable. He can definitely be pretty strong. Pyke is another person that I've seen a lot more recently. I think he's been climbing up some overall win rates. He's not as high as Nautilus is. Remember, I've been calling Nautilus for quite a while. I think people were just sleeping on him until he got hyped up a lot. So Pyke's at about 50%. The problem with Pyke is he really needs to snowball very hard, and he can if he gets resets on his ult, but his items are very expensive. The tank build got nerfed pretty hard a while ago. He was tier 1 when that tank build was good, but he really needs to get Dustblade and Ghostblade, but you can do a lot of damage. You can get those resets in fights, so if you have a team that does a lot of damage and you're going to be in a good position to get those resets early in a fight, then he can be really strong. So if you want to play him, I'd pair him with something like maybe a Draven, or I think if he gets the kill, then Draven gets his to cash in. I'm not 100% about that. But just something that's going to be really aggressive early on. And there's not a lot of those in the meta right now. You're seeing a lot of Jinxes. You're seeing a lot of Twitches. Well, not as many Twitches, but Twitch is very strong. Still seeing some Vaynes, some Kaisas, things like that. So champions that take a while to scale, which means that he's probably not going to get snowball as hard early on as he would like, but overall, he's still okay. He's a good hook. If you consistently hit that hook, he can definitely do a lot of damage. He can definitely get some kills. They did nerf Aftershock as well, and he was a major abuser of Aftershock because he doesn't get any tank stats. So that's going to be kind of rough for him, but then just Demolish, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. And then I think I had been recommending Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace, but you could try something else out, like maybe Ghost Poro plus Ulti Hunter. Maybe that would be something interesting on him. Not sure. But yeah, you just want to go Dustblade, Ghostblade, Edge of Night, which once again are very expensive. They're about 50% more than other enchanter items, so you need to snowball hard early on. But if you think you can do it, he can be a good pick. Thresh, still going to be pretty good. Thresh was, I think, primarily running Aftershock, but he can still run Guardian and be all right. I mean, with Thresh, it really doesn't matter what the items are or runes are. Like, he's always going to find a way to be relevant. He was taking Aftershock, so, he's going to be someone that also did not build a lot of tank items. So, usually he's getting things like Redemption fairly early on in his build, Zeke's, which is, like, okay, but it's not a heavy-hitting AD item. He takes Coin a lot of times. I guess he can take Relic. But, he's still going to be good. He's still going to have his hook. He's going to have his lantern. If you're really proficient on him, and the higher the elo goes, the better he's going to get, because people know how to click on your lantern. They'll know your combos. They'll know what you're doing. He just requires a lot more team coordination than some of the other enchanters. Looks like pretty much everybody's on that Aftershock train, at least recently. So maybe Guardian is a lot worse than I think it is on him these days. So maybe that nerf to Aftershock is bigger than I think. But he still can be good. He's good against some of these all-in champs, especially like Leona. He can flay her out of her engage. So he's got a lot of good things, especially if there are more like engaged champs that are coming in. If we start to see more Rammus, Sejuani, Zac, stuff like that, because of the scuttle changes, then he's going to get a little bit better. So he's kind of like a premier peeler and engage champ that has virtually no scaling. So I mean, he does get scaling off of his souls, but that's really just making up for AD that she or armor that he should have anyways. So I don't know. We'll see. I think you'll probably have. I don't know. Maybe you do need aftershock. It still is like very good in the early game. It just doesn't scale as well, and you really need to try to make a play like a flash flay at level 2 or something with Thresh in order to make up for the fact that he doesn't scale very well. So just mobility and then Zeke's Vow Locket, I think is pretty standard. You could get a redemption in there if you want to, but he still can be proficient. He's just going to get outscaled, so you have to completely dominate the early game, or these champions are going to run you over. You notice this is kind of segregated here. This is like the the enchanters are tier 1, then we've got our engaged champs at tier 2, and then we've got just kind of our misfits in tier 3, like our couple of AP champs and things like that. It's interesting how that works out, but usually it doesn't work that way because if one enchanter is strictly better than the other one in a certain way, then I usually will put the other one a lot lower. So, like, if Sona's just way better than Soraka, I'll have Soraka in, like, tier 3 because I would just always pick Sona. But I think each one of these enchanters has very unique niches that they can fulfill now, and they're all very strong in different ways. And, just because I have them in this order, I've had people argue with me, oh, well, you put this champ tier 3 or, like, number 3, why not number 1? It's like, there's very small margins on these. If you're really good on Sona, yeah, play Sona over Soraka. If you're really good on Janna, yes, you can play Janna over Lulu. Like, this isn't like you have to play these champs in this order if it's up. It's just a suggestion about where I think their relative power level is over a large population. Partially taking into account statistics, but partially also taking into account potential. Especially with Lulu, I'm talking a lot about potential there. But anyways, Leona's still going to be strong. I mean, she got some buffs a few patches ago. The nice thing about Leona is her hard engage is only a 90-second cooldown, so that's really handy for roaming around the map. She's going to be hit by Aftershock as well, and she kind of has a rough matchup against something like Thresh because he can flay her out of her engage, and Nautilus I think is kind of a tough matchup too, just because he's going to have more CC, he's going to be similar in terms of tankiness, and he just brings other stuff to the table. Like his ability to get Ardent Sensor, his ability to wave clear, and things like that. So I think she kind of has a bad matchup into other tanks, but one thing she does have going for her is she can engage through a minion wave. A lot of these can't do that very well. So she can just stand up near the front wave, and then if they ever come up, you're always a threat, right? With other ones, they can kind of position around minions and avoid your hooks and things like that. It's a lot harder to do that against Leona, so I think she'll still be all right. Still pretty good engaged champ. Rakan. Now, Rakan, as I mentioned before, is an interesting one. I'll try him out. We'll see. It is definitely a buff to his early game. He has a lot better stats now, so that's good. That might help him get out of lane. I think he's still going to lose to almost everybody in lane, but maybe just not lose as badly. But we'll see. And then I think you're still going to want to take Guardian, Demolish, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. It's totally possible that you should take Aerie with him if you want to go for Harass with Frostfang. Especially if you are, like, I think that getting 3 points of Q early and then switching to shield later is the way to go. But we'll see. And then just Nimbus Cloak and I think maybe Transcendence instead of Water Walking. If you're really confident that you're going to be healthy the whole time, you could go Absolute Focus. Just depends on how aggressive you want to play him early. His Q does do a decent chunk of damage and heal you for how much it costs. It's kind of hard to hit. It's a lot shorter range than it seems. It's got a very slender hitbox. But we'll see. I think it's probably still going to be Zeke's Val Shirelia's. It's totally possible. Maybe you just go for like a heavy like AP build on him. Now, like not like Lichbane or anything crazy like that, but like Ardent Sensor Athenes maybe on him. And then just go for like Aerie early on. Because like Guardian was supposed to help you out because you have such a tough laning phase, but now that you've got a bit more health, a bit more armor, I don't know, maybe the AP is better. So maybe just going something like Aerie, Mana Flow Bands, although Mana Flow Band's not that great on it, but then you could go Absolute Focus and Scorch or Gathering Storm. I don't know. I'm going to have to try it out and see. I think most people are on the Guardian train with him, though, still. That might be the best thing to do. A lot of people actually, well, some people were on Aftershock. Basically, just this one guy was on Aftershock. But it looks like it's still a lot of Guardian, although some people are toying around with Aerie now. Um, so we'll see. Maybe you do go Redemption or something early. Rakan's just so modular, and like he can use so many different items and runes so well that it's difficult to know what to get on him all the time. I think Zeke's is still really good. It does give you a little bit of extra survivability. I think Nimbus Cloak kind of has to be in there somewhere, though, to sort of make up for the fact that you have this delay. So we'll see. We'll try him out. But for right now, I'm tentatively putting him down lower. He does have, yeah, under. So I think he might go up maybe 1%, maybe 1.5%. It's possible, but he's really hard to play correctly, and this is going to be very clunky for a lot of people. So we'll see. It's hard to tell. You know, with the W, I wasn't sure if the W was going to be a big deal or not, and it was a huge deal. So it's tough to say. I'm going to have to play him first. I'm releasing this before I've played a game on this patch, so because I know people want to see this really early. And then finally, Zyra. She's got a lot of pressure early. Buff to Scorch is really nice. Nerf to Aftershock Champs helps her out. You know, especially at Silver and lower, she can completely take over a game. Maybe I'll have to try her out again. The problem is she does get outscaled by all of these champs, so you have to completely dominate early. Morgana, I dropped her down a little bit here just because she did get some nerfs. You know, she's still all right if you like to play her. She's just very one-dimensional, and at times feels a little clunky, but she does have push. She does have a really good CC if you hit it. And Black Shield will still block most things, especially if you're against a team, an enemy team that does not have a lot of magic damage. It can still be really good. So she's all right. Galio's still going to be pretty good in pro play, I think. A little bit weaker in solo queue. You know, the nerf to Aftershock's going to hurt him, but he can still be pretty strong. He's got nice macro pressure. He's got a good stun. He just does not do a lot of harass. You're just going to get bullied a lot of times, but he can be good. Braum. Pretty nice for Braum. He never used Aftershock anyways, so the nerfing of other tanks is kind of good for him, although he is good in those tank-on-tank kind of fights most of the time. So we'll see. A lot of this is going to come down to whose AD carry outperforms. You know, if you're picking Braum and your AD carry picks Ezreal and the enemy AD carry picks like Jinx or Twitch, you can't do a lot about that. Like, you can't get on them to do anything, and you don't really have any buffs, like that you put on your AD carry. You're pretty much just, you block projectiles for a set amount of time. So he has very limited scaling, but he is very good at team fights, and he's a huge threat early on, particularly with those level 1 invades. So we'll see. He could be really good. And then Blitzcrank, you know, he's nice. He can hook these enchanters and blow them up if you hit it, but he's very one-dimensional, and you need to snowball early. But you can do it. If you're really proficient on Blitz, you can roam around and take over the whole map. Okay. Finally, Kench is in the dumpster. Alistar's okay. I just think that things like Nautilus and Leona and Pyke are going to be better engages right now. They just have better tools in their kit than Alistar does, I think. Although, I mean, maybe like in like high-level play, challenger play, if the Rakan buff is pretty rough, maybe you see Alistar start to creep back in a bit more. Brand, pretty good at silver and below. I just prefer Zyra most of the time, but Brand can work, especially if they have a lot of melee champs on their team and you're going to be doing a lot of team fighting. Huh. Bard's interesting. I just think it's too risky to roam as much as he has to roam to be effective. Fiddlesticks can still work. The nerf to Aftershock is going to hurt his all-in builds, but that's all right. Ornn, play him at your own peril. I don't know. He can work, but it's going to be rough. One interesting one that I do want to end on here is Alawi. I think that she can be pretty good with Draven. I did an entire video on this, Draven plus Alawi in the bot lane, but I think that she's actually pretty decent into other melees as well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, her special interaction with Draven, if you don't know how that works, when you pull out their spirit with Test of Spirit, if Draven gets the last hit, he gets a ton of extra gold with that. So that's really, really powerful. And then she can use Kleptomancy as well to get a lot of gold herself. So she is able to buy things like Black Cleaver and Death Stance early on, stuff that would usually be too expensive for most supports. She's going to get like an extra, 500 gold off of Klepto. So that's going to help her get that Black Cleaver early and give some extra utility to your team in team fights, especially if you don't have anyone else that's going to get Black Cleaver on your team. And if you have a lot of AD champs, that can be good. But it's just really nice harass. It's pretty, like, you don't have to get a mana item, so you can comfortably rush something like Black Cleaver. You don't have to worry about getting, like, Frozen Heart or Zeke's or anything like that early on. She can get Relic Shield. You don't have to worry about getting coin. She has really good wave clear with her Q. So you can push in a tower and harass a lot more. And the fact that the jungle is getting slowed down a little bit, particularly in the early game, is really handy for these champs that just want to go up and bully people. And she does a lot of damage in team fights. I mean, if you rip somebody's soul and just start beating on them in the team fight, like, and everyone piles in around you, like, you're going to kill people. She does a lot of damage in team fights, and people often disrespect it even as a support. Another special interaction with her is Jinx. So whenever Jinx kills that ghost, she gets a lot of extra, she triggers her passive. So she gets a lot of extra attack speed and movement speed, which is really powerful. So yeah, ripping that out, they really can't ever fight you in a team fight because she's going to get a free reset and start taking over. So she could be pretty good, you know, into champions like, maybe in a champions like Leona or Thresh or Nautilus or whatever. Pretty good pick, especially if you have a Draven on your team. Even if Draven doesn't go Klepto, it can still be very strong. So I think she's a very niche pick, but I think that she is really underappreciated and can win a lot. I know she has an abysmal win rate, but I think there's not a huge sample size at all, and I think people just don't play her a lot. But so she's kind of a meme, but I think with Draven, if you have a competent Draven on your team, it can work. I've tried it out personally a couple times. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was cool. So she's not on like my proper tier list there because I think she is a little gimmicky, but in the right circumstances, I think that she could potentially work. So nice lane pressure, okay kill threat, and then just Klepto, Footwear, Biscuits, Time Warp Tonic. I'm not sure after that. We'll see. I think that you could go, I think I went like Taste of Blood and then Ravenous Hunter. Can be a pretty good build. And then just Tabby, Equinox, Cleaver, and Death Dance are good. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Stay tuned for future tier lists. I'm going to have an 80 carry tier list tomorrow, and I'll see if I can do a couple other ones as well. But otherwise, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.